Okay, so this is for the inhibition for the cell A and cell B, and this is very unique in the NAND flash programming scheme. You can review the text here after class. Any question? I know it's a little bit tricky. So then after the erase and program, then you want to read your data. So how do you do this? Okay. So for example, in this string, if this cell is a selected cell, you want to read this data 0 or 1. So how do you do it? So again, if we look at the IDVG curve of the floating gate transistor, this is the typical IDVG curve in the linear scale. And for the erased state, the VTH is typically negative. And then for the program state, the VTH is somewhere here, maybe 2 volts, 3 volts. So what you want to do here is to apply a read voltage to this cell. That means this cell's gate voltage you want somewhere in, let's say 0 volts. The gate voltage, VG. So then, if this cell is in the erased state, you can read out the current, and then your sense amp will determine this is 1. And if this cell is in the program state, VTH is high, then this gate voltage will read out very small current under the subthreshold region. So then you read it as 0. So this is to this single cell. But the problem for the NAND flash is that this single cell does not have direct connection to the outside, because your bit NAND is applied to the top. This is your bit NAND, and then bit NAND will go to your sense amp later. So you need to get the data out from here to here first. That current needs to go through those transistors in series. So how do you want to do it? So the idea is that for all other transistors, for example, if this is a selected cell, for the other transistors, we need to apply so-called V-pass R. This is the V-pass condition for the read. That means what? This V-pass needs to be somewhere here. This is the V-pass. So for all other transistors, you need to apply the voltage a little bit higher than the threshold voltage of your program state, 0 state here. The reason is that you want to fully turn on the other transistors regardless of their state. Because for those transistors on the top, you don't care it's 0 or 1. What you want to care is about this cell. So that means you want to fully turn on those transistors. So you need to assume those transistors may be in the 0 state. So if you want to turn on those transistors, you need to apply voltage larger than this one. And then if you do that, all those transistors are turned on, then their channel resistance is kind of small. So you think that, okay, this cell is directly connected to the bit NAND, and whether you have the current or not, depending on this cell, the state only, okay, regardless of other cells in series.
So your reading is the only one that's actually doesn't have an applied voltage yet.
Yes. Okay, so this explains why the NAND flash. This explains two things here. First, this mechanism tells you why the NAND flash is slow in the read operation. Typically, NAND flash read is like tens of microseconds. Okay. Compared to the low flash, like tens of nanoseconds, this one is 1,000 times slower. Why is that? Any idea?
Because your current is quite small.
Current is small, and also the problem is here. So you need to go through all those transistors.
Capacitance.
Resistance.
Yes, but
Resistance and capacitance. Yeah. So those transistors, each of you give you series resistance, of course, capacitance along that path. So this is unlike the low flash, where the floating gate transistor is directly connected to the, let's say, the source and the drain is directly connected to the bit line or the source line. This one, you need to go through all other transistors in series. That's why it's very slow.
And it's n squared dependency, right?
Yeah, so it's very slow. So secondly, this explains why you cannot have very long string, right? It's already slow. If you make it even longer, then it will become too slow. So you say this is a difference? Okay. Any questions? So we talk about the operations for the NAND flash. Program erase, read. So if you compare low and NAND flash, this is the layout. So the low flash, between two cells you have this contact. So that causes your area. The flash along the string, you don't have contact in between, so you can save the contact area and also, of course, spacing between contact. So the size is roughly 40% here. So this is roughly equals to the ratio between this 4f squared versus 10f squared. And if you further compare those two, I will not read one by one. So the first density, of course, NAND is higher, and then the advantage for the low here is the direct random access, and the read is fast, like 50 nanoseconds, while the NAND, the initial read is like 10 microseconds. So this is a key difference. One is faster in read, the other one is denser in the cell area. And also for the write operation, again, no flash. We talked about before, this channel holding electron is not very efficient. Like 1 out of 1 million electrons can get into the floating gate. So write power is large. This is inefficient. And the NAND flash, all the electrons turn low vertically through the oxide will go to the gate. So it's very efficient. And the programming current is very small. So like picoamp, you only need the picoamp current to turn through. But this one you need to flow like 50 milliamp from the source to drain to get some of the electrons into the gate. And again, this is what we already discussed. For the low flash, because each cell you have individual connection to the bit line, so when you read it, it's fast, and you can also do the random access. But for the NAND, typically you have to do it row by row because you don't want to randomly initialize this one. Once you initialize this, then you will do this RC charging and discharging. So typically you read sequentially, first row, second row, third row. Then you don't need to pay too much cost in this initial charging and discharging. So this is in the page mode. So this is the difference between the low and the NAND. And as we discussed, the NAND is dominating the market these days because of the density. We care about the density. And then we will briefly talk about the multi-level cell, MLC. So the idea is very simple. Okay, the NAND flash, if we look at how we store the information, we store the electrons in the floating gate. and then the threshold voltage will change, right? As we discussed. So typically the erased state, the VTH is negative, less than 0, and this is 1, and then the other one is 0. So here we draw this like a distribution. This is because the cell-to-cell variation across the array. So then you will have a distribution of the VTH for the erased and program state. Okay. So here this is just a single level cell, 1 bit per cell. You just need to have 0 and 1. So the idea to have multi-level cell is that you can control this distribution of the VTH into multiple distributions here. So the idea is that you can control the programming condition to inject different number of electrons into the floating gate. Of course, if you have more electrons in the floating gate, you have higher threshold voltage. Then you can control how many electrons inject to the floating gate. Then you can gradually increase the VTH. And then if you control that, you can make the VTH into multiple states. And then you can encode that into multi-bits. So here, for example, this is a 2-bit per cell, MLC, multi-level cell. So you can program the VTH into multiple states. And then this is erased state, but you can program to program state 1, state 2, state 3. Then you can encode this as 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, and 1, 1. But typically, this is not what the industry is encoding. Or typically, what they will do is, let's say, if this is 0, 0, this one, then we want to call it, let's say, 1, 1. This one is 1, 0. Why is that? Any idea?
Breaker. That's a breaker. So that you can.
So the idea is very simple. So if you have any error between those state 2 and 3, these two states, somehow, for example, the distribution, the tail, if they overlap, you have an error. If you encode the other way, this way, then you only have 1 bit error. If you have this 1, 0, and 0, 1, right? If you have an error, you have 2-bit data error. So it's just a simple trick. So the idea is just have different distribution, different levels. And the key is to make sure the gap in between. Okay, you want to distinguish. So then, due to the process variation, you want to make sure that the tail of the distribution still have the window or gap in between. So you can do like 2-bit per cell, 3-bit per cell. That means 8 levels. And these days, I think the most aggressive one is the 4-bit per cell, 16 levels. And later, when you sense the cell by the sense amplifier, so what you need to do is very simple. Just between 2 levels, you add a reference in between. Then you just read out the current in between. So this is very simple. So for example, here you just need to add a reference in between. When you have the sense amp design, you need to have multi-level reference, and then you can sense it out either through the flash ADC kind of parallel sensing or sequentially, like SAR ADC, you sense it sequentially. So here, this is how we program the VTH into different values. One trick is to use different programming time or different programming voltage, because the idea is that the VTH increase is proportional to number of electrons inject to the floating gate. So of course, the longer time you apply that programming voltage, the more electrons will get into the floating gate. So for example, here if you fix the programming voltage, like here this 17 volts, right? So initially, this is the erased state. You have negative threshold voltage, and then you can vary the programming time. So then the VTH will gradually increase. use number 10 more electron, then VTH increase. Of course, you can tune the programming voltage, larger voltage at the same time, then the increase is higher because larger voltage. So this is the VTH tuning by tuning the programming condition, like voltage and time. And in practice, what is typically done in the flash chip is this called this ISPP, incremental step pulse programming. So this is to have the so-called write and verify. And this is because of the process variation. So even you apply the same programming conditions, then you may get different VTH due to the variation. So then you need to dynamically tune this. And then this is the typical idea. You program, for example, here you apply 16 volts, you program it. After that, you need to read the data out and then verify it whether it is, let's say, within this range or not. For example, if this is your target level, then you have to read it out. And then if it's not in this region, then you have to apply additional programming pulse. So then you have to apply additional pulse. And typically, it's going to ramp up the voltage like this linearly. Then after each pulse, programming pulse, you have to read and verify whether it meets the target or not. So if you do this, you can tighten the distribution. And you can do different kind of programming protocol. You don't need to really vary the pulse amplitude. You can use a constant voltage, but just repeating the pulse. But if you do that, then this is the distribution you get. So this is a programmed VTH, and this is the percentage of probability. So then if you use constant pulse, 18 volts, you get this kind of distribution across the array. And if you use ISPP, then you get this distribution. You can tighten the distribution. So, and also if you use ISPP, you can reduce the program and verify cycle. For example, you just need 2 to 6 cycles to get this target, which corresponds to like 300 microseconds for the programming. But if you use constant voltage, then you need to maybe use like up to 37 program and verify cycle, which will make the program very slow. So the ISPP is widely used in today's NAND flash. And here just some real examples for the MLC for the program state. Erase state is not shown, erase state is always negative. And for the program state, for example, this is 2 bit per cell, MLC. So you have 3 program states, and this is the VTH, and then this is number of bits you measure across the array. Like you see that 10 to the power 6 is 1 mega, 1 million cells, and then you just measure and then tighten the distribution. What you want to do is to make sure there's enough margin between those 2 states. Although this probability is low, like 100 out of 1 million, you have to make sure this is a gap. And then TLC, you have like 7 program states. So this is all by the ISPP. Otherwise, you cannot get this kind of clear gap. You always have some overlap if you don't do this ISPP. Okay, so I think that's it for today, and we will continue.